Supreme Court refused to hear the case of McKesson versus Doe. If you're unfamiliar, McKesson versus Doe is a fifth. Well, of course you're unfamiliar because unless you've read these articles, because nobody just fucking trolls circuit appeals for the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit.
What do you do for fun on Sundays?
Yeah, I look up appeals courts decisions from 2019.
Who the fuck is this loser?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Okay, so let me back up a second. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which presides over Texas, Mississippi, and Louisiana, in 2019 heard a case called McKesson versus Doe, which briefly put, there was a BLM protest outside of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, which is not far from where I grew up, actually. The guy who organized the protest is a local black rights activist named McKesson. It was his protest, but sometime during that protest, some unknown member of the crowd threw a rock at the police. And that rock hit the cop, and I guess it caused pretty severe damage to his jaw, teeth, nose, I think skull maybe. He was pretty fucked up. And so the McKesson was then sued by the cop, and the cop is unknown. It was I guess an anonymous. I don't really.
Yeah, they gave him the name John Doe.
That's why it's McKesson versus Doe. It's Officer John Doe is how he was referred to in the paperwork. Officer John Doe and McKesson. McKesson lost that case, saying that yes, as a protest organizer, you are responsible for the actions of anyone that shows up at your protest, which is kind of an insane thing because that literally flies in the face of the First Amendment. The First Amendment is we have the right to petition, we have the right to protest, we have the right to petition our government with our grievances via the act of protesting. Yeah. If you then hold individuals liable for the group or for unrelated individuals, right? So any bad actor can come to your thing. If I were a fascist or a QAnon or a MAGA or some kind of Proud Boy or whatever, and I see this ruling in Louisiana, Texas, then I could just be any BLM protest, any leftist protest, I'll go up, open fire on the cops, run away, and now anyone who organized the protest is liable for either manslaughter or homicide or attempted homicide, and you could just do that every time. Obviously, that's logically inconsistent with the First Amendment and just a very poor ruling by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. Well, the Supreme Court refused to try that case or refused to hear that case, which essentially means that they are de facto agreeing with that ruling that yes, protest goers are responsible, or the protest organizers are responsible for anybody at the protest, any illegal activity, any criminal act that gets done. So what this kind of ostensibly does is ban, or not ban, but it makes protesting in Texas, Louisiana, or Mississippi very dangerous. Very I would see you're not really going to see any kind of organized protest, or at least not from anybody that's has half a brain, because what political group would want to organize a protest against Palestinian genocide or whatever, knowing that anybody at any point could come up, throw a rock at a car, and that you as the organizer could go to prison for that random bad actor throwing a rock.
Yeah, this doesn't make any sense. I've always heard conservatives you have to take responsibility for your actions. Yeah. Well, this kind of flies in the face of all of that. It's not your actions, man.
It's literally collective punishment.
Yeah, it's collective punishment, and it seems to be the fucking the standard for fucking conservatives.
It's the trend
and
of where things are going, especially with protests. But there was that rule, the cars that plowed into the protesters and the cop cars that are plowing into the protesters. It seems like America has a very where at one time, maybe this is kind of romanticizing the First Amendment, but it seemed like at one time everyone glorified the First Amendment, that the whole Voltaire quote of liberal democracies, the Voltaire quote, I don't agree with what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. That type of thing of that was a pretty universal thing between left or right or conservative, Democrat, whatever. Was that we all have the First Amendment. We all have the right to protest. When it's your turn to protest, when it's my turn to protest, we all have it. And not that I'm supporting liberal democracies here, but if these are the rules by which we've agreed to play, then these are the rules. You can't then move the goalposts on people just because you don't like the outcome.
Oh, but they can.
But they can, and they are.
But
and that's what we're seeing is just this huge trend of cracking down on protests in any way possible. When it's your guys, right? And when it's our guys, when it's their guys, they're paid informants and FBI actors and Antifa carrying Trump flags at the January 6th, right? Because that's what they all say, right? Everybody that's at January 6th was actually all Antifa carrying Trump flags to disguise themselves as Trump to make him look bad or whatever. That's like literally what some people believe. But anyway,
some people they've lost their goddamn mind, bro. Yeah. They've lost their goddamn mind.
This also gets more complicated, and like I'm not a fucking legal scholar, nor am I a judge or a lawyer. I wanted to be a lawyer for a long time, but that's a whole separate conversation.
Yeah.
We looked it up. This goes back to a 1982 Supreme Court case called something.
It's NAACP versus
Claiborne Hardware. Thank you. The NAACP versus Claiborne Hardware. This is a 1982 Supreme Court case where Supreme. Was it 82? I thought it was 82.
You might be right.
Here we can just double check real quick.
1980. Okay, yeah. You're right. 1982. I'm always right
when it comes to these dates. This Supreme Court case ruled that protest leaders cannot be held liable for the violent actions of a protest participant because the Supreme Court said like that is congruent with the First Amendment. So I don't fully understand how this Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals can rule against that precedent. And the answer is we know that Trump packed the courts with like hundreds of judges. In his 4 years, he put more judges in the courts than Obama or Bush did in half of their term. They did more overall, but they only did a little bit more than he did in 2 terms. Yeah. He did a lot in 1 term. And so a lot of these, that's why Kyle Rittenhouse wasn't tried. Remember the Kyle Rittenhouse trial and the judge, his phone case or the judge's phone. Do you remember this? You don't remember Kyle Rittenhouse, right?
I do. No, I do. I'm not very.
The judge's phone was in a few of the shots on the TV streams and everything, and on the back of it said like MAGA or Trump 2024 on the back of the judge's case. So it's like, of course, Kyle Rittenhouse is going to get fucking acquitted. So like, yeah, that's my point. Is that these judges are just like Trump stooges, and like they're all fucking anti BLM protest. So it's not a surprise that a BLM protest. And I don't know the specific judge in the McKesson versus Doe. Maybe it was a liberal. Who knows? But I bet you money that it wasn't. And so we're just seeing this huge trend of this cracking down on kind of these what should be constitutional rights for everybody. Kind of a more for me than they are for thee kind of thing.
So I think what's really going on here is so we have like the idea that we have a Supreme Court. They issued the federal law of the land. That law of the land is the supreme law. And now we have the fifth.
Yeah, this rogue Fifth Circuit. Yeah,
the rogue Fifth Circuit basically just creating a law and doing the opposite of it. But then what's happening is with the Supreme Court not wanting to listen to it, they're allowing that law to exist.
Yeah, so this court isn't creating a law; they're just ignoring existing law. So like the law is the Supreme Court ruling is that you cannot hold a protester liable. The Fifth Court says, well, I am going to hold this guy liable. What are you going to do about it? And then the Supreme Court is then going to say, nothing. I'm not going to do anything about it. So it's not like they're not changing a law. They're just setting the precedent that if you are a protest organizer, you can be tried in those 3 states.
Well, that's what I'm saying is what they're doing is they're decentralizing the rule of power.
Yeah.
Right. But they're doing the same thing with abortion. So what they did is they basically
give it to the states.
Roe versus Wade was abolished and now it's to the states. Yeah. Now, same thing with like constitutional rights.
Yeah.
This is abolished.
That you shouldn't be allowed to do. In theory, the Constitution is a national document. Like that's like individual states can't make their own constitutional laws.
So they're trying to destroy federal power, national government power, and by allowing states to basically overpower
and
the
they're not
national
trying,
government.
they're succeeding. They are doing that. Yeah.
And so now in 3 states, Texas, Louisiana, and was it Mississippi? And those 3 states now, constitutional law does not apply to
the First Amendment kind of doesn't exist, or at least this part of the First Amendment.
Yeah, the right to protest. It does exist, but it basically it makes it so hard to do it that it doesn't seem worth doing it. And that's the point. It's to deter you from protesting, and this is the one way they're doing it. And how we know that this is all fucked up is because the Supreme Court is just not allowing to hear it, which allows it to exist. And this goes back to Trump appointing so many fucking judges throughout all those circuit courts that he's basically like, okay, if we can't take democratic power over the Congress or over the Senate, the House of Representatives or the Senate or even the presidency, what we can do is elect non-democratically elected delegates like judges, where I don't need the Democratic vote to elect these people. These are people who are just like the executive branch. They're just placed there, basically.
And oftentimes, I mean, these judges are up for re-election, but more often than not, they run unopposed, and nobody ever checks into them. So they either don't vote against them because they're running unopposed, or they just ignore that ballot altogether, or because they're the only one on the ballot, they just fill in the bubble. So these judges basically they stay for life. Even though it's not technically a lifetime position, they are oftentimes there. And for a little bit of context, when we talk about the Fifth Circuit, what that means is, if you're unfamiliar with how like the court system in America works, if you're either not an American listener or just weren't paying attention in your civics class that time, that day they taught this, there's city court. So like your city court. So like if you need to go pay a parking ticket or whatever, and then you have like your county court is in your county seat. Like, so if you're in the capital or whatever. And then you have your state courthouse, like you have your state Supreme Court and stuff. But then there's the circuit court, which is almost like regional. So the Fifth Circuit presides over Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi in the Fifth Circuit, that particular little region.
We are here the Ninth Circuit.
Yeah, in Washington, we're the Ninth. And I think that's a pretty big one. It's Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Nevada, California, and Arizona, and Alaska, and Hawaii are all part of the Ninth Circuit. Dude,
that's like a third of the
It is.
states.
It's like, yeah, because California and Washington and Oregon is like huge populations. So I don't know.
That's like 7
I don't know if it's based on population, because like the First Circuit is like just Maine. It looks like it's just Maine, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, and New Hampshire. So there's like hardly any people there.
There's, I mean, just look at the fucking Eighth Circuit.
The Eighth Circuit is North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, and Arkansas. That's like 7 people.
That's like half of the state of Washington.
Yeah, literally well, I guess Wyoming's not in.
I think Minnesota would be like the largest ones.
Yeah, did you know though the population of Wyoming is less than the population of just Tucson, Arizona?
Yeah,
smallish city in Arizona. Yeah,
500,000 people, 400,000.
Yeah, it's about 500,000. Yeah. And the population of Tucson's like 750.
Yeah, but metropolitan area in Seattle is like fucking 2.
So we'll kind of see how that unfolds. It's possible that eventually this will be heard by the Supreme Court. I don't know if they'll ever take it up, or if another Fifth Circuit decision can override it. There's a lot we don't know about this because, again, we're not legal scholars, and we're kind of learning more about this as we go. But you actually kind of touched on the topic of states' rights to abortion. That was kind of that secret third story that I want to talk on. I don't know if you saw, but in my home state of Arizona, an extremely draconic abortion ban was put into place. They kind of just snuck it in Arizona. It's an abortion ban from 1864. When it was a territory, they had an abortion ban, and then the Arizona Supreme Court ruled last week, I want to say, that that abortion ban is now in effect in Arizona. So basically, Arizona was there was another state to just kind of fall to abortion. The Democratic House in Arizona, the state house, has tried to kind of repeal this ruling a couple times, but Republicans have blocked it time and time again. Is most recently of today. Today, actually, April 17th, there was another floor vote in the Arizona State House, and Republicans were successfully able to block the Democratic repealing of that Supreme Court ruling, State Supreme Court, the Arizona State Supreme Court. So, we're just seeing this rising tide of reduction of constitutional rights, reduction of your personal freedoms, your choice to make your own healthcare. Like, fascism isn't on the rise. Fascism is here. We're already living under it.
Yeah, we're just very minor, right? We're not. It's not militaristically fascist yet.
Sort of. We kind of do. We have the hyper militarized police.
Correct.
We have. That's the old meme. Is like, if you have the right to bear arms, if a cop can kill you for seeing a gun, then you don't have a right to bear arms.
Yes.
Yeah. So like,
but what I can say, fuck the president. I can say fuck the government. Fuck this. Fuck that. Blah blah blah. For now, and you still have the right to say that. So we're not full fasci. Like we have a fasci structure of this country.
Seen, the First Amendment only goes so far.
Exactly. So we're slowly chipping away at this, right? And then you would go into the Democrats or like the DSA members or that's why we have to vote Democrats. We have to go to stop the flow of fascism.
This is all under Democratic president, by the way. All of this has been happening under Democratic president with the Democratic Senate. So
what now?
Yeah.
Well, Joe Biden is president, and this is happening.
Vote harder next time, I guess.
Yes.
Go bluer next time.
Press the button harder.
Yeah. If you still think voting Democrat is going to save you, you are just so, I don't know, just misguided. All of these, and yeah, you can argue that, well, it's a Democratic president, a Democratic Senate, but it's a Republican state house. Yeah, sure, but Biden can send the National Guard anytime he wants. I mean, like, Biden can step in, Biden can make executive orders.
Bro, Obama had a super majority. He did nothing.
Obama had a majority in the Democrat the Senate, the House, Supreme
everything.
Court, and the presidency.
He had everything.
For
he did
8
nothing.
years. Yeah.
That should tell you everything.
I mean,
right
he sent a lot of drone strikes to Yemeni weddings. He did that.
Yes.
So,
dude.
So many Yemeni weddings.
Pastime
so many Yemeni weddings. Yeah.
You know.
Oh
my God.
Yeah. So just I don't know. It's just don't come at me with that no matter who shit, because obviously that's not working. What is working is getting out there I was going to say protesting. Unless you're in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, be careful.